Please welcome.
I gotta make sure I have this cord out of the way so I don't knock a bunch of stuff over onto the tables here.
If you fall down, I'll be catching you here.
You'll catch me if I fall?
No
All right.
No worry.
Isn't there a song about that? Can we sing a song about you catching me if I fall off the stage here? Well, hey everybody. I am super excited to be here. I'm happy to talk with all of you about personal branding and a little bit about my story and my journey. But I need to know a little bit about who you are first. And I know this is a design community, but how many of you are actually designers? I mean, you actually use your hand to design stuff. Okay, so we do have a fair amount of designers. Architects? Who's an architect here? It said architects in the meetup thing. We got 2 architects here. A quasi-architect over here. Aspiring architect. What do the rest of you do? Somebody just shout out like, Product managers, marketing, robot. You are a robot? You build robots? Both? All right. Cool. So I'm talking about personal branding here because whatever your career is, whether you're a designer, whether you're a product manager, whether you're a marketer, whether you're an architect, no matter what you do in your career, if you get into personal branding, your career is going to be a lot better. You run a business, are any of you entrepreneurs, do you have like your own business? Are you the partner in your business? Anybody? Got 1, 2, 3? Okay, so we have a few people who are business owners here, entrepreneurs. So I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a designer, I'm a marketer, I'm not an architect, I'm not a robot, at least I don't think so. Therefore I'm not so, right? So I started on this personal branding journey about 4 years ago, and it completely changed my business. It's been financially very lucrative for me, but more importantly than that, it's been a lot of fun. And it's allowed me to connect with a lot of people around the world. I'm not sure I would be here today talking to you here in Shenzhen, China, if it weren't for the fact that I got into this personal branding. So I'll tell you a little bit about that story, but just by way of quick introduction here. So I'm the founder CEO of MWI. It's a marketing agency. We have offices in the US, Hong Kong, now here in Shenzhen. This month we're opening an office in the UK, and some photos of our team there. I also do this thing called Influencer Inc., which is about thought leadership and personal branding and getting your name out there. We have a very active Facebook group, which I know you all have VPNs, so you'll all be on there tonight. And we also do publishing, so we publish articles. We're launching a publication now, and we're doing events and training and consulting and coaching and all sorts of stuff around personal branding. And these are some of the publications that I've been able to write for over the past 4 years since I got into writing. My strength is writing. People go out and they do personal branding, they do video, they do social media. For me, my thing is writing, and I try to be a speaker. We'll see how well I do here today. I'm trying to do video, I'm trying to do social media and all that, but really writing is my passion. That's where I feel like I'm really in my element. So I do a lot of writing for these publications, and I was able to leverage this to write a book last year called Chief Marketing Officers at Work. I interviewed CMOs from companies like PayPal, Spotify, GE, Target, Home Depot, a bunch of large companies, some startup companies as well. And this was a life-changing experience for me writing a book. I'll talk a little bit more about that and the value that that has brought for me in terms of personal branding and what it can bring for you in terms of your personal branding if you decide to write a book or if you already have written a book. Has anybody here written and published a book already? Anybody? Anybody? You're working on one? You got one? You got one out there? Awesome. All right.
It's not out there yet.
It's not out there yet. Almost though?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's say I'm 4 pages out.
4 pages out?
It took me 2 years.
All right. 2 years, 4 pages.
No, I'm 4 pages out of 300 pages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
2 years, 300 pages.
Yeah.
4 more pages to go and then you're done. Sweet. You're close. All right. Personal branding has taken me to exotic places. I got to hang out on Richard Branson's island with him. This was the best photo I could get with him, was in the buffet line during dinner. Everybody else was like hugging him and stuff. I'm like, I'm going to sneak up and get some Indian food behind him and get a photo with Richard Branson. So that was my photo with Richard Branson. But this was because of my book. This was because of personal branding that I got invited to this. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But so some of you might be thinking, well, this personal branding stuff's great, but I don't want to put myself out there. And plus, I'm not even an expert, really. I mean, there's so many people out there who know so much more than I do. How can I be an expert? How can I put myself out there as an expert? So it's not that hard to be an expert. All you need to be an expert is to know a little bit more than the person you're talking about. Now, what's that have to do with this photo? So imagine you're out in the woods and you're with your best friend, your bearded friend, and you're out there and all of a sudden this bear comes out of the woods and starts chasing you. How fast do you have to run? A bear can run 35 miles an hour. Sorry, I'm still not very good with kilometers and all that stuff, but what's that come out to? 50 kilometers an hour or something. So a bear can run 50 kilometers an hour. How fast do you have to run to outrun the bear and not get eaten?
Faster than your friend.
Exactly, faster than your friend. That's all you have to run. So if you want to be an expert, all you have to do is know more than the people that you're talking to or the person that you're talking to. I have a friend who's really good at this, Ben Smith. He seems to know more about everything than everybody else, but I figured out that he just reads a bunch of magazines and he just knows a little bit more than everybody about everything else. But because he knows a little bit more about everything, he seems like he's an expert on everything. So if you know a little bit more than the person you're talking to, you're an expert. Now, that might sound like just a trick, like you're manipulating people, but it's really true that you're not just a tricky expert, you actually can help people if you know a little bit more than they do about something. When I moved here to Shenzhen, I knew nothing about living in China. I didn't know about anything to do with China or getting an apartment here or where to shop or where to get food, just all this little stuff. But within a month of moving here, I knew a lot of stuff compared to somebody who hadn't moved here yet. So if I ran into somebody who was just moving here to Shenzhen, I could say, oh yeah, you want to go here and you get this, and you go to this place to get this, and then you need to talk to this person. So within a month of being here, I sounded like an expert on Shenzhen to somebody who knows nothing about Shenzhen. Now, to somebody who's been here in Shenzhen for 10 years, of course, I'm not an expert, but I can still help that person who knows nothing. So even if you look at yourself and you say, well, I'm not an expert at anything, it's probably because you're saying that because you're comparing yourself to the people who know the most about that topic. But to the people who know nothing about that topic, you can still help them. You can still be an expert to those people, and you can still build a personal brand around that topic. So I'm not going to go through any more slides. This is my contact information, WeChat. I'm on everywhere at Josh Steimle. So if you guys are on Twitter, Instagram, all that other stuff, you can go there, but I'm just going to talk from this point on. So here's my story in a nutshell. I started my business in 1999. It's a web design agency. In 2004, we started getting into the more marketing side of things. So we started doing search engine optimization, we started doing social media, we started doing all these other things that were coming out, providing marketing services. And the way that we grew the business was word of mouth, referrals from clients, and just trying to do good work, networking, going out to meetings, things like that. And the business never did that well. We'd go up in revenue, we'd go down in revenue, we'd go up, we'd go down, we'd go up, and we'd go down. We never really made permanent progress to where the business was growing consistently. In 2012, I thought, you know what, everybody else that I look at, all my competitors, as I did some competitive analysis, they have these badges on their website. And on their website it says, as seen in Forbes magazine and TechCrunch and Mashable and CNN. I saw all these media badges and I thought, if I had those on my company's website, maybe we'd get more business. Maybe people would trust us more if we had that credibility that comes from being in the mainstream media. So I had a friend who is in public relations, and I went to her and I said, hey Cheryl, how do I get these badges on my website? I don't care how I get them, I just want to get those badges on my website because it looks cool and I think I'll get more business from it. And that's all I was interested in at that point. And she said, well, you have to have a story that's interesting to a journalist. And you have to talk with a journalist and convince them to write a story about your company or about you as an entrepreneur. And she said, frankly, your business is not that interesting. You run a marketing agency, you design websites, you do marketing for people. There are 10,000 other companies out there that do that. It's not very interesting. But she said, your story as an entrepreneur and your failures and your successes and coming back over and over again, that's a more interesting story. You should work on that story and get that out in the media. And then you can get the coverage, and then you'll get those badges on your website. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. Great. Can you help me do that? So she started helping me to get stories placed in the media. And she helped me get a story in Fast Company. And then as I was working with Cheryl, I saw that she was on Forbes magazine as a writer. And I thought, well, that's interesting. How does she have time to run a PR agency and also write for this magazine as a journalist? So I went and asked her, I said, hey, how did you get this position writing for Forbes magazine? And she said, oh, I don't write there full time. They don't pay me anything to write there. And I said, wait, they don't pay you to write for the magazine? Why do you write for the magazine if they don't pay you to write there? And she said, well, I write for Forbes because I get to write for Forbes and I get the exposure that that brings me. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. How does one become this writer thing for Forbes? And she said, well, they call you a contributor. Contributors are not paid. They're not employed by Forbes. Forbes has about 1,500 contributors. And these people get to write for Forbes, and they're willing to do that because of the exposure that it brings to them. And she said, my editor's coming to town in 2 weeks. If you want me to make an introduction, I'll introduce you. And I almost said, oh, you know, I'm so busy with my business. You know, this sounds interesting, but I don't really have time. I almost said that. Thank goodness I didn't say that. Instead, I said, oh, wow, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd really appreciate that. That sounds like fun. And I went home and I talked to my wife and I said, you know, Cheryl said that maybe she can help me get in to write for Forbes, but I don't know, I'm so busy running the business. It seems kind of irresponsible for me to take time away from the business to write these articles, and I don't know what would come of it. I mean, should I do this? And we talked about it and decided, you know, this is kind of a chance of a lifetime to write for Forbes. You should probably do this even if you don't know what's going to come out of it. So 2 weeks later, I met with this Forbes editor, and he had already seen my blog. Cheryl had passed it along to him. And I meet him, and he says, hey, I saw your blog that you write on, and we love your writing. We want you to write for Forbes. Write the exact same stuff you're writing on your blog. We're just going to publish it on Forbes now. And that was it. I was connected with Forbes. I was in, and I thought, wow, this is great. Okay, I don't know where this is going, but this sounds like fun. So I started writing for Forbes. And at first, I wrote about entrepreneurship and startups, and I had just moved to Hong Kong. So I was in Hong Kong. This is about 4 years ago, and I'm writing about Hong Kong startups. And I'm having fun, and I get invited to all the startup parties, and everybody wants to talk to me because I'm with Forbes. And I wasn't very popular when I was in school, so this is the first time in my life that I feel like I'm popular because I write for Forbes, and I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of fun, you know? Like, people care who I am and what I have to say because I'm with Forbes. So this is kind of fun, but it wasn't doing anything for my business. And after about 6 months of that, I started looking around at what other people were writing about on Forbes, the other contributors, and I noticed that there were a couple of guys who were like me. They ran marketing agencies, and they weren't writing about startups. They were writing about marketing. That's all they wrote about was marketing. And I thought, well, that seems kind of self-promotional. I mean, they're marketers writing about marketing, and they do marketing, and yet at the same time, that's what they know, right? They're experts at marketing, so of course they're writing about marketing. Well, why can't I write about marketing? So I started writing about marketing, and all of a sudden, everything changed. As soon as I started writing about what I was doing for a living, as soon as I started writing about marketing, all of a sudden, the calls started coming in. People started contacting my agency and saying, hey, I saw your article in Forbes about search engine optimization or paid search or social media and how to do it. And I read it and I loved it, and we want to hire your agency. And so we started getting these leads from the writing I was doing for Forbes. And then we started getting more leads and more leads and more leads. And then I wrote this article on how to hire an SEO firm. And this was the big one for us, because when somebody wants to hire an SEO firm, they go to Google and they type in how to hire an SEO firm, and guess what was popping up? My article on Forbes that I wrote on that topic. And that blog post over the next year caused our company to grow 1,400% in revenue. That one post on Forbes has generated over $2 million in revenue for my company. One article, one blog post that I wrote that took me about an hour to write, $2 million for my company. That was the power of that platform of having Forbes and writing about what I did and what I knew about. So when I saw that happen, I said, okay, I really need to double down on this. And I need to hedge my bets and make sure that I am protected, because what if I get kicked off this platform someday, or something happens, or Forbes decides we're not going to use these contributors anymore. So I leveraged Forbes, and I went to other publications, and I went to Entrepreneur Magazine and said, hey, I write for Forbes. Can I write for you too? And they said, yeah, sure. If you write for Forbes, we'll trust you. You can write for Entrepreneur. And then I went to Mashable, and I did that, and TechCrunch. And I went to all these other publications, and I did the same thing, and I got myself into these writing positions at about 20 other publications and started writing for all of them. And then I went and I found this publisher, and they had this series of books called the At Work series, and they had lawyers at work, and CTOs at work, and CEOs at work, and founders at work, and venture capitalists at work. And I thought, well, there should be a CMOs at work book, a chief marketing officers at work book, but nobody had written it yet. And I run a marketing agency, and I sell services to CMOs. So I went to this publisher and said, hey, I write for Forbes and all these publications, and I see you have this book series, but you don't have CMOs at work. Can I write that book? And they said yes. And then I went to all these CMOs, and I said, hey, I write for Forbes and all these publications. Can I interview you for this book about CMOs? And I got all these big CMOs to be in this book. And then that book got published. And then I got a call last January, and this person said, hey, I'm reading your book about CMOs, and we're putting together this event on Necker Island that Richard Branson owns, and it's all these big marketing people coming in. We've got the head of the largest PR firm in the world, and the largest ad agency in the world, and the head of digital marketing for Nike, and the president of Time Magazine, and the head of Forbes Magazine. They're all coming, and I'm reading your book, and I love it. Can you come to this event? And we want you to be a guest at this event and meet Richard Branson and hang out on his island. And I thought, wow, like, of course, yes, I'll be there. I don't care if it was 80 hours of travel in 1 week, 40 hours there, 40 hours back. I didn't care. It was the worst travel experience ever, but it was the most amazing experience being on that island. So these are things that have happened, come to me because of the writing and the enhancement to my personal brand. This all happened by accident for me. It wasn't on purpose, it just kind of fell in my lap. It was lucky, I had the right connections at the right time. But look at the things that happened because of what I was able to do with my personal brand, by accident. Now imagine yourselves, what could you do if you did some of these things on purpose? Now it's not super easy to get in at Forbes and these other publications, it's not easy to get a book publisher, but what are different things that you can do right now, today, to start building your personal brand and start getting some of the benefits of people knowing who you are and seeing you as an expert in your field? So, number one, get good content out there. Write good content. Put it out there any way you can. Blogs, social media, WeChat, Weibo, LinkedIn, however you want to get it. Now, people look at LinkedIn and they might say, well, yeah, I can publish something on LinkedIn, but who's going to care? Who's going to read it? It's not like having a platform like Forbes. Really? It isn't? Because I can show you proof that it is. I wrote an article on Forbes, and it got about 2,000 people reading that article. Well, that's great, right? 2,000 people reading one of my articles, that's not too shabby, that's not too bad. I took the exact same article, copied and pasted it onto LinkedIn, and published it on LinkedIn the same way that anybody else can, and it got 14,000 views on LinkedIn. And it got a lot more attention, a lot more engagement, I got a lot more response on LinkedIn than I actually got on Forbes. So you might look at these big magazines and say, well, hey, if I could be in those big magazines, that would be great, but I can't get in those magazines. You can get a lot of the results of being in a big magazine on LinkedIn or these other platforms that are accessible to anyone. Medium's another great one. I have a friend, Ben Hardy. He was the #1 writer on Medium last year. And one post on Medium, his first really well-researched post on Medium, he was nobody before this. I mean, he was a great guy, but nobody knew who he was. He wrote this amazing post on Medium. He got 50,000 subscribers to his email list from that one post that he wrote on Medium, with nobody knowing who he was before that. Since then, he's grown that email list to over 200,000 subscribers, And he just was able to leverage that email list and his writing on Medium, and he was able to get a book deal. They paid him in advance of $220,000 US to write a book as a first-time author. That's amazing. Nobody gets advances like that. But he was able to get that, and he was able to do that from writing on Medium. Now, he writes for Huffington Post. He's written for some other publications, but he doesn't have Forbes. He doesn't have the biggest publications out there. And mostly, he got it from his writing on Medium, which is a platform that anybody can write on. So now there are other ways to get your name out there. You can do video. You can be active on social media. The key, really, is to provide lots of value to your audience. There are people out there who have questions that you can answer. Answer those questions. There's a great book out there called Utility by Jay Baer. He's a marketer. And the book's basically about answering questions. People have questions that they want answered. You're an expert on that. Find the questions, answer the questions. You can build a following around that simple tactic. Just find those questions. There's a website called Quora out there, Quora.com. How many of you have been on Quora? Okay. How come everybody who's up front has been on Quora and the people in back have not been on Quora? That's interesting. All right, so Quora is a question and answer website. You go on Quora, you look at the questions people are asking about what you know, and then you answer those questions on Quora, but more importantly, you answer those questions on other social media platforms. You write blog posts about it. You make videos answering those questions, especially video, because video is the thing that everybody's afraid of, right? Everybody says, well, you know, I can write something because then I can edit it and I feel comfortable with that, but video, if I mess up, then it's embarrassing and I have to stick it up on YouTube and I have to do my makeup and my hair and all that stuff, you know. So video is hard, but because video is hard, it's an opportunity. Because not so many people are doing it, you can really dive into video and you can gain an advantage there. The advantage will be gone in a few years, but it's still there right now. If you dive into video online, you can create a real presence there and build your personal brand, become a KOL, all that stuff. So that's my story in a nutshell, some of the quick tips on personal branding. I'm happy to answer any questions once we go into the Q&A stuff. I hope this has been entertaining, educational, and please connect with me on WeChat or email, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you might have about personal branding. Thank you so much. Only reaches this far, by the way. I can't hand it to you, sorry.
I mean, Gary Vee is, everyone, at least everyone knows Gary, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are some people who are posting the video out there, but it's more experienced people. You don't see normal people posting it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can see like YouTube vlogs, like everyone, they just go with their phone, they just talk something, you know, they post it in YouTube. But
yeah.
I didn't see it in a Facebook.
Yeah. Well, they should be. I mean, you don't see it, but that's the opportunity, is you don't see it because everybody's afraid to do it. I mean, how many people here would go out and post a 5-minute video of themselves answering a question on Facebook today, like, and have like no fear, like just be like, yeah, I could do that. I mean, there are probably like a handful of people here in this room that would be like, yeah, I could do that. The rest of us are like scared and we're like, oh man, I'd have to prep for that for a week and I'd have to write out a script and I'd have to...
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, whenever I think of this, I was like, oh, okay, not so soon, you know, I have to prepare some more and, you know.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, is the people who are really good at doing that stuff, they don't really prepare. I mean, they've been preparing for 20 years, but they're not preparing the week before, the hour before. They're just like, let's just go do it. And they do it, and they don't prep, and that's why it turns out so good, is because it's so authentic and it's so real, because they're not doing all the prep. I mean, some people do prep. There's some KOLs that do like funny videos and stuff, and you can tell a lot of prep went into it. But a lot of the people, I mean, like Gary Vee, like, Gary, how many of you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is? Gary Vee, handful. I mean, he's a big KOL type guy in the US, and he's key opinion leader. So influencer. In the US we say influencer, here we say KOL, right? So, I mean, he's an influencer in the US, and he's very popular because he's very dynamic and he's entertaining and he curses a lot and all this stuff, and people love it. But, I mean, he's so authentic and raw, and you can tell he doesn't do any preparation. He just talks. But we're all scared to do that, right? Yeah. But we shouldn't be. Sometimes I practice. If I get a good idea for something I want to do on video, but it's like early morning and I haven't showered yet and my hair is a mess, I'll still go do the video, even though I look terrible and I'm in my pajamas and stuff, just to emphasize to myself that it really doesn't matter what I look like. As long as I'm providing great value, people don't care. People don't care what I look like as long as the value's there. And I've done this over and over and over again with videos where the production quality is low, I don't have a good camera, the lighting's bad, the sound's not that great. But if the value of the content is still good, people don't care that much about that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Is it the same for written content? I think with written content, you have to be a little more careful because people know that you can just edit the stuff easily. So then if you make mistakes in writing, I think people are a little bit less forgiving because they're like, man, this guy didn't even read his own stuff over once or he would have caught all these errors. With video, people are like, well, you know, I mean, you can't, it's hard to go back and redo all the video stuff. But with text, it's easy, so why wouldn't he do it? So just doing something is better than doing nothing. I mean, you can write a book on your phone, you can film a video on your phone, you can do all this stuff. And so many people get hung up and they're like, well, I need to do it this way. It has to be on my desktop. I have to have good video equipment. I have to have this scripted out. And then you end up doing nothing. And he's writing a book on his phone while he's on the metro, on the DTA. I mean, that's awesome. So when it comes to confidence and speaking, because I was like telling us like she was so nervous to get up here today and she's talking about how she's nervous afterward, but she did a great job, right? I mean, like everything was perfect, everything was great, you did a great job. And one of the things that really helped me as a public speaker was when I realized everybody in the audience wants you to succeed. Like they're supporting you, they don't want you to fail, they don't want to laugh at you, they don't want to be like, oh man, I saw this girl choke on stage. Like, I mean, they want to get a good presentation. They want to get great value. And so they're all cheering for you. They're all supporting you. And I saw the best example of this at TEDx Hong Kong about 4 years ago. I went to attend this TEDx event and this guy was up on stage. He's about 5 minutes into his TED Talk. And he just completely blanked out. This is like the worst nightmare for a public speaker. Completely forgot everything. And he's up there on stage in front of 1,000 people and he's just saying, and he just couldn't remember a single word, nothing. And he's up there talking to himself and he's like, man, I've been rehearsing this every single day for 30 days and I cannot remember even what the topic of my presentation is. I mean, his mind just went completely blank. And this guy's a college professor, he's 60 years old, he's got 30 years of experience presenting in front of people and he just completely, utterly choked. Took him about 5 minutes to get it together until he could sort of finish his presentation. And while he was up there during these 5 agonizing minutes, I mean, I'm in the audience, I feel like I felt worse than he felt. Like I was down in the audience, I was just like, oh, this is so painful watching this guy up here. I just felt so bad for him. But then people started shouting out of the audience and they're like, hey, take your time, we love you, you know, just take a minute, think it through. Like the audience really supported him. They weren't laughing at him, they weren't making fun of him, they wanted him to get back on track. They wanted to hear what he had to say. And so everybody was supporting him and they tried to create this environment to say like, hey, just relax, take your time, and you know, if you have to stand up there for 3 minutes, then stand up there for 3 minutes and then come back to it and we'll forgive you, it'll be okay. And after I saw that, number one, I saw that and I thought, no matter whatever happens, at least that will probably never happen to me. I mean, not that bad. Like, so that made me feel better with public speaking because I was like, man, that was the worst. Like, at least I'll never do that. But then second, I realized the audience wants you to succeed. They want you to be successful. And so now when I go out in front of people, I think, you know, these are my friends. Everybody wants me to succeed. They want me to give a good presentation. I have nothing to be nervous about. And if I mess up, it's not that big a deal. I mean, I can stumble and take a few seconds and catch my thoughts, and then I get back onto it. It's not that big a deal. And that's helped me to relax a lot. And I feel like that's helped me to be a better public speaker because now it's not that I don't care, but I just recognize that the audience doesn't care that much if I make a little mistake or something. So here's the thing. yes, there are 1,000 people out there who have done what you're thinking about doing, and they've done it better. But nobody has your background, your experience, your stories. Nobody can duplicate that. And there's somebody out there that will listen to you say the same thing that's already been said 1,000 times, but they'll ignore the other 1,000, but for some reason they'll connect with you. Something about your story, your background, your history, the way that you say it, they'll say, oh, I really like the way she says that, even if they've seen it 10 times somewhere else already. And so one of the mantras I repeat to myself every day is, there's somebody out there that needs what you have in your brain. This is what I tell myself every day. There's somebody that I can connect with that nobody else can connect with the way that I can, and I'm doing this for that person. And maybe there's one of those people out there, but chances are there are actually a lot more than just one person out there. And it's the same for you. And that's why I would say just ignore that and just go do your own thing. Ignore the fact that 1,000 people have already done it. Ignore that they've done it better. Because as soon as you start telling your stories and say, I was here and I was doing this and then I learned this and this is what I do now, and you explain how you overcame some challenge or problem, or you answer some question, you're going to do it differently than anybody else has done it. You might think it's not that different, but somebody watching it will say, man, I just like the way she does it better. And you'll make that connection. So yeah, I would say just jump in and just do it and just ignore all that negative chatter in your mind.